On December 5th, 2003, Marcello Torres and his best friend and graphic design business partner, Vicente Gutierrez, along with two female friends, decided, on a whim, to visit the majestic Disneyland amusement park in the famous city of Anaheim in sunny California. 22-year-old Marcello Torres was a young, hard-working, and determined graphic designer and aspiring animator. Everyone who knew him liked him for his fun and kind personality. On that unfortunate day, he and his friends took several rides before destiny led them to the thrilling Big Thunder Mountain roller coaster ride, where he was seated in the lead passenger car. Soon a horrific and tragic bloody incident ensued on the ride. Marcello Torres died from the terrifying wounds, and a few others, including some of his friends, were injured. The disastrous crash was the result of the failure of a mechanical part on the locomotive ride vehicle. It was later confirmed that the failure was a result of shocking negligence by the park. Stay tuned for all the details of the sad and horrifying death of Marcello Torres at the Big Thunder Mountain ride in Disneyland. The Big Thunder Mountain attraction is a fascinating roller coaster-style ride with a track length of nearly 2,700 feet. The track is of a tri-rail design with 2 load rails and a 3rd rail or backbone and 3 chain lifts. The track is divided into 6 zones. Each zone is sealed and air pressurized. On September 5th, 2003, Marcello, along with his business associate and best friend Vicente Gutierrez, and friends Christina Becker and Shannon Zinder, arrived at the Disneyland theme park for some fun and thrills. They arrived at the park just before noon, tried some rides, had lunch, then decided to take the Big Thunder Mountain ride. Nothing about the ride was scary or worrisome. They simply had no reason not to take it. After all, it is Disneyland, and everything is advertised as thrilling and super safe. They got their tickets and boarded train number 2 of the ride. Marcello sat in the most sought-after seat, which is the front of the first car, just behind the locomotive. Marcello was sitting on the right side of the car, and his best friend Vicente was on the left. Their friends Christina and Shannon were sitting in the seats directly behind them. They got their safety straps on. The workers checked that everyone was seated and strapped properly, and before you know it, the train began its 13th run of the day. Little did the riders know that the ride on that particular day was placed into service despite being yellow-tagged, which is something that employees did not understand what really meant. Normally, only green-tagged trains were to be placed into service. Nevertheless, the ride began moving, and there was no turning back. About 1/3 of the way through the ride, as the train was entering the fastest part of the attraction, the floating axle of the locomotive shifted and derailed. The passengers, including Marcello and his friends, began freaking out and screaming for help, but there was nothing that they could do except hope that the ride had sensors for an emergency brake. Nevertheless, the ride kept moving. When Marcello was literally watching death coming his way, the ride entered the last turn before a tunnel, and the train began to severely deteriorate. The train was falling apart as it moved forward like a rocket. Soon the train entered the tunnel at a substantial rate of speed, and at that moment, all hell broke loose. A nightmare began to unfold, and it was violent and bloody too. The derailed wheels slammed into the brakes attached to the floor between the rails. This impact forced the rear of the locomotive up and its nose down. When the front of the locomotive struck brake 4, the back shot upwards towards the ceiling of the tunnel, violently breaking away from the cars as it pitched up. The locomotive slammed into the tunnel roof and came crashing down on top of the first passenger car. The force of the impact crushed the fiberglass and metal frame of the car. In doing so, the entire weight of the locomotive crashed down on top of Marcello Torres, crushing his chest and pinning his body to his seat. Everything happened so fast and violently, the survivors never fully recovered from the horrors they saw that day. The force of the falling locomotive drove Marcello's body back so far, it even bent the safety railing of the row behind him. Marcello had to endure unimaginable, excruciating pain and agony for a few minutes because he did not die upon impact. Minutes later, Disneyland employees arrived on the scene and ordered everyone out of the train. Marcello could not move and remained trapped in his seat. Minutes later, and before the arrival of emergency crews, he died of extensive internal bleeding, resulting from severe blunt force trauma to his chest, causing rib fractures and lacerations to his lung. His death was horrific, heartbreaking, and completely preventable. Here's why. The Big Thunder Mountain attraction was plagued with issues, and many repairs were overdue. On that particular day, the attraction was not even supposed to be operational. In fact, the operator decided that the 13th round of the day will be the last one. Marcello was on that last 13th round. The ordeal of malfunctions in the Big Thunder Mountain attraction began earlier in the day at around 10:30 a.m. when the ride began its first rounds. Several Disney ride operators and ride leads reported from that first round that unusual noises were detected on the attraction. Despite such explicit knowledge, the employees did not pull the subject train in part or whole due to fear of reprisals by management. Nevertheless, the ride stayed open, even though the manuals state very clearly that such noises from the ride must be immediately addressed. The Big Thunder Mountain attraction was broken, and the operators and management knew that. Investigators later concluded that the derailment was in part the result of a mechanical failure, which occurred as a result of, among other things, emissions during a maintenance procedure of at least 2 required actions. The left side up-stop guide wheel on the floating axle of the Big Thunder Mountain attraction was not tightened in accordance with specifications. Additionally, a safe wire was not installed. The ride's train was dangerously unsafe for use, yet it was put into service by ride operators, maintenance, and management on the day of the incident. And that's not all. They also discovered that there was an inadequate instruction in the operation guidelines as to what that ride operator is expected to do when an unusual noise is detected. The ride's train wasn't even tested on the day of the incident before the ride opened to the public. In a nutshell, that ride was tagged yellow and out of service on the morning of the incident, but negligence prevailed on that sad day, and it was opened. Believe it or not, the workers and management at Disney followed the rules and merely sent a trained and certified employee to thoroughly inspect the ride on that unfortunate morning, he would have discovered that he merely has to tighten 2 bolts and attach a safety wire on the wheel assembly, which would have prevented it from falling off and causing a horrendous, deadly disaster. Fortunately, Disneyland management and ownership realized their mistake, and within weeks issued a statement taking responsibility. The family of Marcello Torres did not sit idle after their beloved son was lost due to the arrogance of a park that put money before safety. They righteously launched a lawsuit and forced Disneyland to settle for an undisclosed sum only 3 days before jury selection was to begin. Additionally, they twisted the park's arm and forced it as part of the settlement to adopt new safety, training, and inspection measures that would prevent future incidents. Marcello Torres' parents also gave $500,000 of the settlement money to Brooks College in Long Beach to provide scholarships to aspiring animators to commemorate their son, who always aspired to be a top graphic artist. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell button to get notified every time we upload a new video that will take you to the heart of the scenes and mysteries of some of the most terrifying incidents, accidents, disasters, and paranormal events from around the world.